Welcome in, listener. You're listening to a segment from the Slumpbuster podcast with Ju-Ju Dre. Find the full episode on Spotify, iTunes, the Google Play Store, or our YouTube channel. Enjoy. The MLB Baseball Writers Association had their annual vote to determine this year's Hall of Fame class. Now, first off, congratulations to Derek Jeter, Larry Walker. You guys both deserved it. If you're unfamiliar with kind of more or less the process of how the Major League Baseball voting kind of like takes place. So basically, for a player to be voted into the Baseball Hall of Fame, they need to have a 75% vote. They need to have played in the MLB for 10 seasons, and 5 seasons after retirement, they become eligible. Once they're on the ballot, they have 10 years of eligibility to receive that 75% threshold. Now, we have a couple interesting names who have been close, well, relatively close, who have been on the ballot for a few years. Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens. So both these guys in this year's voting received Roger Clemens 61% and Barry Bonds 60.7% of the vote respectively. Now, here's what I gotta say, Baseball Writers Association. It's like one of the biggest hypocritical associations in all of sports because they're not voting on these guys because obviously PEDs. But what I'll say about this, you know when these guys were making their most money? Writing about these guys in the PED era. Writing about these guys when they were just hitting bombs into the bay each and every night. Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, Barry Bonds, all these guys. And it's so disappointing. They would have been Hall of Famers with or without the roids. It was a product of the era that they played in. But now we're here that your all-time home run leader legitimately has a chance of not making it into the Hall of Fame with 2 years left of eligibility. What do you think? What's your thoughts? I mean, I know you had mentioned in the past with when we talked about like John Bodone's legacy, the PED should just be an automatic disqualifier. Doesn't matter the context, doesn't matter circumstances. If you got popped with it, you're done. But these guys were generational talents, arguably some of the best players to ever play the game. Yeah. Again, with or without the roids. It was just a matter of, in the steroid era, legitimately, almost everyone was doing it. Like when you watched, bring up like the Mitchell Report, when this first went through Congress, the list of players that were found to be on that client list that were receiving steroids was scathing. For every pitcher or batter that was caught doing it, there was at least 5 or 10 more in AAA ball that were doing it as well. So, I mean, in terms of the era, I think steroids, if anything, just elevated the talent of like the legitimate stars like a Barry Bonds and a Roger Clemens.
Yeah, but I still feel that it's an unfair comparison to some of the other people that are being voted into the Hall of Fame, right? Because if you were able to perform without cheating, right, and without the steroids, you know, what would Barry Bonds have been like had he not ever done that, right? And so he has sort of a step above everybody else just because he had the ability to take steroids. And therefore, like, I just don't think that it's a fair comparison with everybody else in the Hall of Fame. The other issue is because of all the cheating scandals with baseball, I think it just looks bad to elect right now somebody into the Hall of Fame that even is tied to another type of scandal, right? Like, you already have to try to fight to show baseball sort of legitimacy as a sport and to show that, hey, this is not a rigged game, right? Like, we do deserve people to gamble and put money on these games, right? Like, it's not rigged in any way. It is fair. And now you're already going through, well, you know, we have people banging on trash cans, people using buzzers. And what happens when you elect somebody that took steroids into the Hall of Fame? Like, what is sort of that image? You're basically saying it's okay to cheat and we're going to elect you into the Hall of Fame.
Well, you have active players right now, active pitchers. They're putting out statements. I'd rather play a steroid guy than play someone that knows my signs.
Yeah.
Because baseball is all built on the fact, can he hit that ball? And knowing a fastball is coming or knowing a curveball is coming is more of an advantage than being able to just try and make contact and have another extra 10% of power on that swing. And when you talk about someone with such great eye-hand coordination, someone with a phenomenal swing like a Barry Bonds, yes, it made him into the player that would eventually hit a record-breaking 762 home runs. But even without that, Barry Bonds was easily going to clear 600 home runs without a question. It was easily going to be close to a 3,000 hit guy, all the RBIs, everything. I mean, there was literally a whole season where statistically, if Barry Bonds didn't even swing a bat, he would have still had like a 400 on base percentage because pitchers were so scared to pitch to him that they would walk him every time. In San Francisco, they had a wall of rubber chickens that they would hang up every time someone intentionally walked Barry Bonds, because let's look at some Barry Bonds stats. Let's pull up the amount of intentional walks that guy received in the peak of his powers. For starters, his highest walk total was an astounding 198 in 2002. That is almost 200 times that he wasn't even able to swing a bat. Could you imagine, like, is it not cheating to take away this guy's ability to swing a bat?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I still think that is cheating though. Like the fact that you had to use a performance enhancing drug, right? Even if you are extremely talented, the fact that you had to enhance your performance in some way, to me, that takes away from your legacy. And if you put somebody in the Hall of Fame that has even the slightest bit of cheating, where do you draw the line, right? Do you say, well, he was cheating, but everybody else was cheating, so it makes it okay? Well, that sort of turns into a slippery slope of, well, they were stealing signs, but everybody was stealing signs, in 2020, right? So we should allow those people, right? Well, Jose Altuve, he had a buzzer, right, that was on his shoulder, but there's people banging trash cans. So we should still allow him into the Hall of Fame.
I mean, we're talking about which scandal was worse consistently. How we even had Pete Rose throwing in his input into the debate and saying, hey, what I did wasn't as bad as what these guys are doing. So I get that. It's tough to compare, like, what was worse? What was the better of two evils? But, I mean, when we're talking about, because everyone on the ballot, everyone we're talking about has potential questions about their ties to PEDs, except maybe like a Derek Jeter who was more of a line-to-line hitter versus a power hitter. Larry Walker had the benefit of being more of a five-tool player in his, like, heyday. But even still, like, the majority of players that are coming up in this era were tied to it. So when it's just a matter of, is it just we don't like these guys? Is it because they were so phenomenal above everyone else that we have to dock them even more?
I mean, I think that could be a part of it. Like I said, for me, I just personally think that it's like, hey, if there's even a little bit of evil, right? And I say evil as in like there was some type of scandal, not like the person is actually an evil human being, right? But then that means you got to squelch all of it, because if you let a little bit in, then that means you got to let a lot in. And then there's no way to stop it. There's no way to turn it off. And so that's why I think, some of it is maybe that, hey, these guys were just so dominant, so we got to find an excuse to reason why they were so dominant and why they were so good at the sport. And PEDs is an easy way to say that, even though we know like what the stats say. We know how hard it is to be able to hit a baseball consistently when it's being thrown, at 85, 90 plus, miles per hour. But still, I'm fine with Barry Bonds not being in the Hall of Fame.
I'm not. And I'll admit I have bias as a Giants fan, sure. But I think it's just a stain just in terms of being from a baseball perspective, to not have someone who was legitimately carrying the sport from a rating standpoint, from an entertainment standpoint in your Hall of Fame. Like I said, everyone who's voting on this, everyone from the Baseball Writers Association of America benefited from these guys, their blood, sweat, and tears, and maybe even some tainted blood in their heyday. So like, if you're going to accept their money, if you're going to accept those paychecks, and then when it comes time to pay up, I think there is a little bit of questions there. Another notable person who's also on their 8th year in the ballot is going to be Curt Schillings. Curt Schillings is less of a steroids holdout, but more of someone who's getting targeted more so for his recent outbursts of political beliefs. I think it's a little unfair that he's still clinging on to this potential eligibility. He's at 70% though. When you look at Clemens and Bonds, 61%, 60.7, 2 years to go. I don't know if they're going to be able to pull through. It's hard to make that leap, especially when you have new people coming on the ballot each and every year. And baseball at most averages maybe 3 people getting into the Hall of Fame in a given year.
Yeah. And like I said, with the cheating scandals that are going on right now, I think it's just a bad look if you have somebody even remotely tied to another cheating scandal, right? Is that there's so many spotlights sort of on Major League Baseball right now as it is, that the writers almost can't afford to make a mistake and choose somebody that's been implicated in a cheating scandal.